Hello, everyone, dear members and friends. A very good morning to our experts and participants from Germany, and good afternoon to our participants from India. I am Deepthi Khanetkar from the Indo-German Chamber of Commerce, and I'm heading the Inbound Services and Delegations Department. And I welcome you all to this session today titled What It Takes to Develop Green Hydrogen from a Project Manager's Perspective. As you all are surely aware, there is an increasing focus all across the globe on hydrogen playing an important role in decarbonization. Similarly, India has also announced the National Hydrogen Mission, the draft of which is currently under consultation and is expected to lay out the roadmap for integration of hydrogen and especially green hydrogen in the energy mix. And we have already also seen announcement from certain large companies in India in the energy sector about plans for going ahead with hydrogen projects. So yeah, there is an increased interest in the topic. While we currently see many projections and prognosis about the demand for hydrogen and its application role in reducing the carbon footprint, the fact remains that hydrogen generation at large scale is currently a novel technology. And against this background, we have with us today experts from RWE Technical Institute, which is part of the RWE group. The RWE group, which is of course very well known, is one of the world's leading generators of electricity and also globally a leading player in renewables. RWE is also acting along the entire hydrogen value chain. And RWETI, so RWE Technical Institute supports RWE with project management, engineering, and consulting. And they are here with us today to share key insights, strategic and technical, about developing green hydrogen projects. So more your on-ground reality strategizing and planning for projects. No? So I would like to introduce today two speakers whom we have from RWETI. Our opening speaker and knowledge partner is Mr. Ingo Björnkraut, CEO and Managing Director. He has specialized in driving strategic growth and positioning of global engineering construction businesses for over 25 years. Mr. Björnkraut today guides the sustainable project management, engineering, and consulting business of RWE with a strong focus on supporting industrial clients worldwide to increase operational resistance and transition toward lower carbon business models, and at the same time managing to stay cost competitive. And then we also have with us Mr. Henning Josvik, Head of New Technologies. He has been in the energy sector for 22 years with various leading roles in business development, mergers and acquisitions, project management, and a professional background in geotechnics, mining, and waste disposal engineering. Having worked at several business areas at RWE, including mining, power generation, new technologies. Since November 2019, Mr. Henning is appointed as Head of New Technologies at RWETI. So I'm now happy to hand over to Mr. Ingo Björnkraut for his opening remarks. Thank you.
Yes, Dipti, thank you very much, and good afternoon to India from Germany. So first of all, I'm quite happy to be here today with all of you and to introduce our session and to frame a little the background. So the subject is what it takes to develop green hydrogen. And starting with myself, I'm from education, I'm a physicist and economist, working with RWE now since many, many years. And I'm responsible for RWE Technology International, who is the project management and engineering company of RWE. On the one hand, developing technically and executing all our own investment projects as an RWE group on a global basis, but also since many, many years being active on the external market in helping other energy companies or industrial companies around the world with technical advice. So please advance 2 or 3 slides. Yeah, that's one more and one more. Yeah, here. Yeah, sorry, one back. What is the main background to frame our topic of today? So what we see here is a world map with different colors, and the headline shows that national Z0 emission targets, which we see all over the world, are really likely to affect the long-term investment decisions of industrial groups. So what you see on the world map is countries where these net zero emission targets is already by law implemented, or where you have a proposed legislation, where are policies documents in discussion, or where there are targets in discussions. And a few countries are still have not taken any decision. But what we see is that this world map and the colors now change really every week, every month, and more economies are focusing on the net zero emission targets. So you see, for example, in Germany or many European countries, this is already by law implemented. And it's not only a political task, but also the German industry, for example, recognizes clearly the need to decarbonize. And it's not only about the energy industry, and I think we will see that later on in the presentation, it's about a broader part of the industry. It's also affecting steel or chemical or cement companies, and backed by EU and government grants, these companies are now starting to develop and launching low carbon pilot projects. So that's in fact the framing of the overall picture. And hydrogen is for sure one central element of that. But before we go there, I would like to share a little bit history of RWE. Please, let's go to the next slide. So looking back to more than 120 years of history, RWE has been always passionate about generating electricity. And if you look to these 120 years, there are different phases, also from the society point of view. And it all started more than 100 years ago to generate the first electricity for the communities. And the target at the time was it must be affordable. So electricity, electric energy must be affordable to the communities, to the people. That was really a long way to go until the 2050s, 60s, when the industrial development took really pace, and it changed a little bit from affordable to be reliable. So electric energy or energy supply must be reliable to support the growing economies in Europe, but also across the world. So that has been the time of nuclear power, of starting a lot of coal stations to be in all cases reliable without power cuts. But now, since I would say 10 to 15 years, the focus is changing again. It's changing to the topic of being clean. So nowadays, also for RWE and many other companies, it's the target to produce green energy and clean energy. And we come now in the next slides to the hydrogen element in this storyline. So on the next slide, we see a little bit the RWE group at a glance. So why we are well positioned for the new energy world. And we're talking all about the world, about energy transition. In Germany, there's also a German word for that, but basically it's everywhere the same issue. And our company is well prepared to drive this development and to be really part of that. So what's the background? I mean, we are an experienced power generator. We have a diverse power plant portfolio, which is currently really changing. And since a couple of years, we are a leading energy company in the renewables. So we're a real player on offshore wind, onshore wind, and PV. And we have a proven track record of rapid emissions reductions in the last 10 years. This was leading to a new purpose of the group in 2 years ago, where the new purpose is really our energy for sustainable life. And together with this new purpose, it's also a target which we have claimed that RWE will be net zero for carbon emissions by 2040 with a clean, secure, and affordable energy. Let's look on the next page how we are structured. And on a high level, I don't want to go to too many details, but in fact, we have today 4 main building blocks in the overall group structure. On the left-hand side, it's RWE Renewables, who are strongly growing and developing offshore wind, onshore wind, PV, and storage, being active today already in 20 countries. And for example, for offshore and onshore, we're really on the top 3 players across the world. The next green one, second one from right, is RWE Generation. This segment is looking more to the firm fixed capacity, which is gas, hydropower, biomass, and hydrogen, which is allocated to RWE generation. And you see there's still some hard coal mentioned, but on the hard coal side, we are really on the exit path. So only a very few units are still there, which will also disappear quite soon in course of the German exit of the coal business. As an upfront, RWE Technology International, we are a daughter company of RWE Generation. So as mentioned, project management, engineering, consultancy with roughly 300 employees in Europe. These both elements are linked with RWE Supply and Trading, which is in fact our trading house. They do energy trading, customer solutions, but also gas storage. And that is also an element very closely connected to hydrogen, which we'll see later on. The last block on the right side is in fact RWE Power with still lignite and nuclear, which is clearly on the phase out part. As you know, nuclear power will be stopped in Germany next year. And for lignite, there's a clear exit plan for the next decade to stop burning lignite fuel in power stations. So that's the structure we have in the group. And if you look now where we are active across the world, this is on the next page. And without going to all the small countries, it should give you an impression that we have developed to be a really global player with activities in every area of the world. So North America is very strong on onshore wind. South America, we have certainly still the European main hub being there active in all the countries, but we also look to Asia, which is China, Australia, India, or Japan. And please one page more. Looking a little bit more deep to our base conditions for the new energy world and what is about our fleet. So there are two elements to mention. So first of all, we have flexible gas capacities of roughly 18 gigawatt of gas, hydro, and biomass. This is an important element looking to the growing share of, let's say, fluctuating power supply from offshore and onshore wind. So you need these firm flex capacities, and there we have a strong position in Europe. So we can, with this flexible power park, secure the backbone of the energy supply on our European core markets and to balance as a partner of the renewables the security supply. But it's a little bit more also with our gas fleet and a position in the LNG business, which we trade. We are not only ranked as #2 in Europe in terms of capacity, but we also have the connection between gas and gas power, and this is also something which is relevant for the hydrogen business in future. In the pie chart, you see a little bit the distribution which we have today with the, I would say, light green in onshore wind and solar power. The blue is offshore. The big block green is hydro, biomass, and gas. And you still have coal and nuclear in the dark grays, which will more and more disappear in the next couple of years and being replaced by renewable or gas production. So overall, a portfolio of roughly 40 gigawatt is still in operation. If we look a little bit more to the renewable part, and this is on the next slide, this is a pivotal element for the hydrogen and the green hydrogen business. So we have a strong starting position on the renewable markets, and this is the ideal condition for clean, reliable, and affordable electricity. But it's also an ideal condition to kick off the business in green hydrogen. If you look to the structure, roughly 73% is still onshore wind of our portfolio and 25% offshore. Both will grow differently in the next years, and there's a small part of solar which is also on the growth path. So overall, today we have roughly 9 gigawatt pro rata of installed capacity in the renewable sector. And this is really a global presence, so it's not only in Europe, but it's also in the US and in Asia. And you see the distribution here. US is really a strong foothold with 40%, but also UK with a large offshore wind farms in North Sea provides a big bunch of capacity to our portfolio. Finally, if we look to the next slide, please. We really count on renewables for our growth strategy as a group. So just to give 2 or 3 ballpark figures, in the next couple of years, we will invest 5 billion net in renewable energy between, let's say, last year and 2022. That's really a large investment program. And the target is to have 13 gigawatt of net capacity on the renewable sector until 2022. This is more than 3 gigawatt more than we had last year. Just 2 examples. One is a large offshore project called Sofia on the coast of UK. It's the largest offshore project we have worldwide with a capacity of 1.4 gigawatt. But we also have PV projects in US. If you say as an example, Hickory Park is the largest solar storage project in the USA. Now, looking to hydrogen, what role does it play in this overall picture? And if we look to the next slide, you see 3 main building blocks, and I will start from the right hand. So the right hand is the European Union target to be climate neutral until 2050. So having this target in view, there are 3 building blocks on hydrogen which support to reach this target. So the first one on the left-hand side, that we see green hydrogen as a pivotal element for the successful decarbonization or energy transition, and especially in sectors which are normally hard to decarbonize. So if you look to steel or cement or chemical industry or oil and gas industry, you will need hydrogen as a enabler to get these segments of the industry more climate neutral with lower CO2 emissions. The second element is about timing. So if you want to have these climate neutrality in the EU until 2050, and for RWE even 10 years earlier, we need to start with the hydrogen economy right now. So you need really a kickstart in order to become an industrial leader in hydrogen technologies, to get the clarity for the industry on investment decisions, and keeping in mind that every sector has to contribute to the 2030 climate targets. So it's not only the energy industry, but also other industries. Everybody has to provide its contribution, and buzzwords like sector coupling getting an additional meaning in this area. And the third element is, let's say, reflected by the current technological status of hydrogen and green hydrogen. So it's about scaling up. Today, the production capacities are still in small sizes, small units, but you need to have megawatt sizes, 100 megawatt, 200 megawatt, to have really an impact on the development. So scaling up hydrogen technologies with large-scale applications and replacing gray with green hydrogen is an important element to reach the target. On a final view, let's look to the map of Europe on the next slide, and to look about the government targets about renewable hydrogen electrolyzers by 2030. And it's really a large number. So the governments aim to build 80 gigawatt by 2030, which is in fact only 9 years away. So published on the 8th of July last year, there was a clear plan of the European Union, a roadmap saying by 2024, we want to have 6 gigawatt of electrolyzer capacity for green hydrogen. By 2030, it's 40 gigawatt for the EU plus, 40 gigawatt in EU neighbor countries for the export to the EU. Export is an important buzzword, because it's also clear that Europe will most probably not be able to produce all the green hydrogen in Europe, but it will be also an international market. It will we will have import and export streams across the world, it's also about building up the infrastructure to get this segment of the industry and the segment of the decarbonization growing quick enough to get the required input. So our focus is certainly on green hydrogen, but if we talk about building up the infrastructure and building up enough sizes that this business is running. We will also need to look to blue and turquoise hydrogen in the meantime as a European Union. And then on the map, you see that this hydrogen strategy by the European Union, with the targets which are clearly set, have been adapted in the different countries with an own hydrogen strategy. I think the newest one is UK, where this strategy has been announced 3 or 4 weeks ago. All the other countries had it a little bit longer. And on the light blues, you see that this hydrogen strategy on a country basis is in development to pay into the European Union targets. Yeah, this would be my part as a frame setting of the whole discussion, and my colleague Henning Josvik will now go more into the details of hydrogen at RWE from a project management and from a project development and execution point of view, and share some more details in the different segments. Thank you for the time being. I will stay here.
Okay, thank you very much, Ingo, for the very interesting insights regarding, let's say, general information about RWE and hydrogen in general in Europe. I'm happy to present to you now some general insights of, let's say, of a project manager, which I am, and then I'm also the head of new technologies, but nevertheless, I'm quite deeply involved in the project management of different RWE hydrogen projects. If we can proceed with the next slide, please. Okay, that's me. Okay, in my presentation, I'd like to give you an overview of some H2 general thinkings. Then I'd like to highlight some selected H2 projects within RWE, and I would like to give you not a guideline, but some interesting insights of what does it take to develop a green hydrogen project in Germany or Europe. And maybe then we have, if we still have time, I will give you some technical insights of, let's say, the state-of-the-art technologies. What are the pros and cons, or advantages or disadvantages? I will give you a general overview of the economics, what you should have in, what should be taken into account if you develop a hydrogen project. And then I'd like to share some key takeaways which we have learned in one of our big projects. Next slide, please. And the next one. Okay. Hydrogen. As you already know, hydrogen, or especially green hydrogen, is too expensive. And with this slide, I'd like to give you just a brief overview of what does it mean. You can see here the CO2 avoidance cost for selected hydrogen applications, which we have calculated, assuming that we have a current carbon price of 50 euros per ton CO2. And then you can see what does it mean for the steel productions. You have, let's say, you need 100 euros per ton. Then it makes sense to switch to green hydrogen. The substitution, that's the next column, the substitution of gray hydrogen, etc., like ammonia, it's more than double of this. And yeah, then you see the other applications which you can see. And this shows exactly the gap, or maybe the challenge we have to incentivize the green hydrogen to become economic. This is one of the main challenges we have. At the moment, the green hydrogen has a big economic disadvantage against the gray hydrogen. I would say, depending on the process you produce the gray hydrogen, it's, let's say, a factor of, let's say, 4 to 5 times more expensive. Okay, the next slide, please. Nevertheless, even though there's this economic challenge, we have to understand, or we have to accept, that hydrogen is one of the key, or maybe the main key, to achieve the climate goals by 2050. As Ingo already mentioned before, there are, let's say, different targets in 2030 and 2040 and also in 2050 to achieve this zero carbon environment. There are, let's say, 4 facts, or maybe items I'd like to share with you. There are prerequisites for achieving these climate goals. Germany and the EU, as I said, can't can't achieve these climate goals without zero carbon hydrogen. The second one is that hydrogen has a huge potential for the manufacturing, transport and heat sector, especially to decarbonize areas in which the renewables energy cannot be used directly. The third one is that hydrogen has a storage capability. Hydrogen can store huge amounts of renewable electricity or renewable energy for long periods, and therefore it is one solution that the volatile wind and solar production can be used as a base load. And of course, the last one is that we have export opportunities. Let's say we get the hydrogen from other countries. So we think that Germany will become, let's say, an import country, and this is a chance for other countries maybe to supply us with hydrogen. On the right-hand side, you see the potential demand for hydrogen in 2050. This is a slide which is not valid in this structure for India. You have let's say you have different numbers, and let's say you have a different top one. But I think maybe it's always the same structure, and we have to think into the same structures. And for, let's say, Germany, it is like you can see here. The biggest one in Germany and Europe is the transport sector, meaning to substitute the conventional combustion engines with electric or fuel cell vehicles. Then we have the industrial feedstock sector, and also the industrial heat, and of course the building sector, and also power generation and storage sector. And as I said, for us, or here in Germany, the transportation sector, including the vehicles, the long distance travel, and also ships and aviation, has a huge amount of potential for hydrogen in 2050. Okay, I think we are now coming to a poll question. This is how we would like to structure also this presentation to become more active. Maybe we can start with it now. Okay. Okay, thank you much. Yes, here we can see the prioritization. Yes, of course, the transport sector is fully right. This is the biggest amount of potential we have for the H2, and of course, industrial feedstock and gas power storage. Yes, they are nearly the same range. Thank you very much for this. This gives me a clear understanding that you are still in my presentation and that you're following it. Thank you very much. And as I said, there are, let's say, similar charts available for India, and therefore you have to see how to focus on the, let's say, low-hanging fruits. Where does it make sense to start first with hydrogen projects? Okay, thank you very much. Next slide, please. Yeah, as Ingo has already mentioned, we have, let's say, a strong hydrogen strategy within RWE, coming, let's say, from a let's say, coal history we have, but now we are fully committed to the hydrogen, and we can offer everything in the whole value chain. We have, let's say, we have the capacities and capabilities to produce green or clean electricity, which you need for green hydrogen. So you need electricity from biomass, from wind onshore, offshore, or photovoltaics. to avoid any CO2 in the electricity and in the production process for the hydrogen. Furthermore, we are, let's say, we have a high expertise in the in how to produce green hydrogen with the electrolyzers and steam methane reforming, and also we have the capabilities to trade hydrogen on an international way. And nevertheless, we are able, let's say, to store it or maybe to use our own gas power stations as potential customers for the green hydrogen. And this let's say underlines the strong strategy we have to become carbon neutral in 2040. Next slide, please. Even though, let's say, it repeats what I have already said, I just want to highlight what we can do. Electricity from renewable energy. We have hydrogen and production and electrolyzers capabilities. We are able to handle hydrogen logistics, meaning the storage and transportation challenges we have, and we are also familiar with the hydrogen applications. Next slide, please. And how this can be done? This can be done by RWE technologies, where we have not only, let's say, the intellectual capability to do this. Now we also have the project management capabilities and the engineering and consulting capabilities to develop those projects, starting from the power generation, coming to the connection of this generation plant to the electrolyzers, which is a very, very challenging thing, because you always have to connect often fluctuating energy source with a baseload running electrolyzers. We are able to operate and to operate electrolyzers. We are able to handle power to gas applications, also power to liquid applications, and we are familiar with the gas transport and H2 storage applications, and also able to handle all necessary gas applications in-house. So everything can be done within RWE and, let's say, concentrated in RWE technologies. Okay, next slide, please. This gives you an overview of how we can use, let's say, existing infrastructure for example, in Germany for hydrogen. On the one hand, because it's a very big asset you have. The pipelines are available. You have gas storage facilities, and you should use them, because when you have a shift from the conventional gas to the hydrogen, you shouldn't get rid of the existing infrastructure, because it's a real asset and it's a very costly asset, and you can use it as we see. We assume that that most of the European long distance gas network can be retrofitted to hydrogen. It's not an easy way, so it's not, let's say, just saying, oh, we get let's say the gas out of the pipelines and we put hydrogen in. No, there are a lot of challenges you have, but they are handled. You can handle them, but you have to do some kind of feasibility studies, etc., to see, and maybe technical modifications, but you should think about this. And also the same is valid for the gas storage, that we use the existing salt caverns for the gas, and they can be converted maybe into hydrogen storage caverns. And this is also a big asset, because then you have this let's say application, as we mentioned before, that you can use hydrogen as a storage for, let's say, fluctuating electricity generation. And of course, you can do the production of natural gas-based hydrogen via methane pyrolysis, and this this could enable the hydrogen supply far from coastal areas. This is just maybe in a nutshell some insights that you shouldn't get rid of. Let's say all the things you have, let's say, in place. Now you should try to find out how you can use them, and we are quite convinced that this is possible. Okay, coming to the next slide and give you an insight about the RWE projects we have. Next slide, please. Next one. With this slide, I'd like to show you our funnel we have and how to achieve the goal of 1.8 gigawatt, which we hopefully expect in 2030. There's a general assumption that when you develop a project, and this is what I have also learned in my professional career in RWE, that you need at least, let's say, 10 or more projects, and out of these 10 or more projects, only one becomes active or will be realized. On the right-hand side, you can see the percentages. At the beginning, you have 100% of the project, and then it's going down until you have the project up to, let's say, 10%, which is a very good outcome from my perspective. On the left-hand side, you see our so-called stage gate process. We have installed this process, and the project, or maybe the opportunity development, or maybe the idea you have, has to pass different gates. And in each gate, you have several prerequisites, conditions, approvals you have to double check, or you have to get before the project, or maybe the idea, no, it's not the project, before the idea or the opportunity enters the next stage, and so that the maturity of the project can increase. Giving here some examples of how does it work. Maybe in an opportunity development at the moment, you have some kind of an ideation phase. This lasts 1 to 3 months, where you have, let's say, a small team sitting together doing a lot of desktop research and trying to shape the project, or maybe the project idea. You maybe have first contacts to the customer and think about, together with him, does a project make sense in, let's say, in your maybe on your properties, or what can we do together? Then you have, let's say, after this ideation phase, you have a clearer view on this. Maybe you have a partner on board, and then you pass the stage gate 0 and have an early opportunity. And this early opportunity, you validate the assumptions you made. You start to set up some kind of first business case assessments, etc., etc. It's a highly iterative process, and this duration lasts about 4 to 6 months. After this early opportunity development, you have to pass the next gate. You have to underline it with a concept or maybe a feasibility assessment, and then you are in the more mature opportunity development phase, which lasts additionally 7 to 9 months. And yeah, you can see here some examples of projects which are in those phases. Some of them I would like to highlight a little bit later on. And after this more mature opportunity stage, you enter the next phase, which is the called and so famous project development phase. And this takes this is a very intensive phase, because in this phase you have to spend some money. You have to ask for, let's say, maybe external, sometimes for external support, or maybe you have to staff the project. And from our perspective, or let's say based on our experience, this phase lasts up to 2 years, and you will have some DevEx, so let's say development cost of, in average, let's say 1, 2, or 3 million euros you have to spend, because the people who are working on this are doing it not for free. They cost some money, and this is what we see in our projects. And after the project development phase, you increase the maturity of the project to the best point you could reach. You underline it with a severe and with a very sophisticated business case. You have the customer in place, you have all the parties in place, you have the contract in place, etc. And then you start the final investment decision. And after this, you enter the phase of project execution. Depending on the size of the project, we think that it will last additionally 1 to 1.5 years after for this project execution phase. Nevertheless, it could also last 2 years or 3 years, depending on the size and maybe on the special or individual prerequisites you will find on the site you have. And you have also deviate between whether it is a greenfield project, so you have enough space and you can work like you want. You can do a you can structure the project like you do it from scratch and from a book, or you have a brownfield project, which makes it much more complicated, because then you have to take into account that you have to integrate your project, for example, your electrolyzer project, into, let's say, a steel industry process or refinery process or chemical process, or, as I show later on, in an existing gas-fired power plant. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. Here you can see how we want to achieve this 1.8 gigawatt electrolyzer capacity until 2030. You see that the first megawatts are starting in 2023, but only a few. And then in 2024, then the curve is going up. And yeah, until 2030, you can see how this will work. And this shows that we still have a gap of now, let's say, 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, where we are still in this development phase, or yeah, as I mentioned on the slide before, where you have this where you try to structure and shape your project, or sometimes you are already in the execution phase, but nevertheless it lasts 2 years or 2.5 years before your electrolyzer will be commissioned. Okay, on the next slide, please. Before we start this slide, I think we have the next poll question. We can do it here, if it's possible, the next poll question. Yeah, thank you very much for your answer. The answer A2 is fully right. And for me, it was very important at this point, maybe to highlight this again, maybe to give you a clear understanding that let's say the project development for a hydrogen project, even though, let's say, hydrogen seems to be very easy, or maybe seems to be smaller than a normal power plant, it still takes some time. It doesn't fall from the sky. You need some time to develop your project. Starting from scratch until the commissioning of the project, please have in your mind that you need at least 3 to 4 years from the first idea until the commissioning of the plant. Thank you very much. Excellent. Okay, the next one. Here, I'd like to give you an overview about our engagement in hydrogen, with a clear focus on Germany or maybe Europe. Nevertheless, we as RWE Technology also are involved in other projects worldwide, in like South Africa, Indonesia, Japan, and Australia, just to mention a few. But nevertheless, here's some names we can share with you. All these names are let's say fixed names, so you can, if you Google them, you can see, or you can find additional information in the internet, in addition to the link which is highlighted on the right-hand side of this slide. In a nutshell, together with partners, we are active in more than 30 projects along the entire renewable and hydrogen value chain. Just to give you an overview, it's a big mixture between onshore and offshore applications. We have offshore wind parks. Now they are thinking of how to integrate intelligent, innovative, and fancy hydrogen applications, which makes sense from an economical point of view. In this offshore wind park, we have the same. This is maybe this Aquaventus family. You can see here it's a very huge, big family. It's an initiative in Germany where let's say, yeah, to say it in a nutshell, we think, or maybe in Germany, the people think that we do not have enough green or renewable capacities onshore, and so that the offshore, that the hydrogen production will take place or should take place later on offshore. But offshore and onshore is totally different, because you are facing huge amount of additional challenges when you go offshore for hydrogen production than you have it when you stay onshore. There's a Southwell industrial cluster. I will highlight it on the next slide. The EMS hydrogen project. This is, let's say, one of our power plants in the Netherlands, where we want to build 50 megawatt electrolyzers. This is a quite advanced project in the project development. I think we are facing the investment decision within the next, I would say, 12 months. Yeah, the Geth2 project in Lingen, it's the, let's say, the mother project of the EMS hydrogen. It's a bigger one. I will highlight it in one of my next slides. It's a 100 megawatt electrolyzers on the site of an already existing and in operation gas-fired power plant. What we want to show here is, on the one hand, there are a lot of projects, and that, let's say, we are strongly committed to those, because until the end of the year, the beginning of this year, RWE has installed a dedicated board member for hydrogen at RWE Generation. So it's very prominent there to push the hydrogen activities in the RWE company. We understood, as we also already said before, we understood that the green hydrogen, especially the green hydrogen, is the key to the energy transition to achieve the climate goals. And we think that it is necessary to create a hydrogen economy, that this is a long-term endeavor and requires a lot of regulatory and financial support. And we as RWE are participating active in these discussions with partners, with politicians, to push these things forward. And what we think that, no, we don't think, we know that if we go for green hydrogen, this will definitely give a very, very big push to the global growth of renewable energy production, because without renewable energy production, you will never get the green hydrogen, which is necessary, again, to achieve the climate goals. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, here I would like to highlight some of the projects we have. And the Geth2 Nucleus project is, from my perspective, a very nice example how projects could be structured, or how, let's say, from a project development phase, or maybe from a company phase, you can, let's say, try to attract politicians to become more dedicated to the hydrogen topic. This is an initiative which was founded a couple of years before, with a lot of partners from, let's say, which are, let's say, active in the whole value chain, from the electricity production, electrolyzer manufacturers, you have the gas grid operator, you have the grid operator, and you have the customers in these initiatives. And in these initiatives, it was said, okay, we want to build the first 100, maybe 200 or 300 megawatt electrolyzers in Germany. We are committed to this, but we have to see how the gaps, the technical, no, not the technical, the economic and regulatory gap can be closed. And having such a consortium in place, you have, let's say, a strong force maybe to start these discussions, and let's say the people will listen to you. The people on the one hand in the town where, or maybe in the town or surrounding, you would like to build it, and on the other hand, let's say on an overall level, the government will also listen to you, because you have something to offer. You would like to build something, but you say there's still a gap which has to be closed, and let's sit together at the table how we can close this gap to, let's say, to make the starting point for this gigawatt initiatives, which has been shown from Ingo before, when we saw what are the European targets for hydrogen. And from right now, if you make like this, it's not possible to realize, because this gap still exists from the economic and, let's say, regulatory gap, but this has to be closed. And without closing, you will never achieve the goals. In this initiative, we are quite active, and the aim is, as I said, to build an 100 megawatt electrolyzers, and the COD, so the commissioning of the plant of the electrolyzer plant is envisaged for 2024. Quite ambitious targets, and as I said, in the, let's say, stage gate process, we are close to the execution phase. The final investment decision has to be taken within the next 1 or 1.5 years. The next slide, Rostock. It's also a big initiative of developing up to no, go back please. Yes, development of up to 1 gigawatt electrolyzer capacity in Rostock. Huge amount. So we are now talking about gigawatt. And in the Geth2, we are talking about megawatt, 100 megawatt. But please be aware, we do not have so many 100 megawatt projects in place. Nearly none worldwide. There are, let's say, I think there are only a few, but it's not, let's say, a commodity or something like you can buy or you can order from a supplier. No, it's, let's say, first of its kind, and we have to develop blueprints maybe to see how can we accelerate all the negotiations and also the production capacities from the manufacturers to enable them to deliver gigawatts of electrolyzers. The next one is here the Aquaventus. It's up to 10 gigawatt. I mentioned it before. This is a offshore initiative in the North Sea. Quite interesting. They want to add hydrogen applications to these offshore wind parks. The next one I would like to skip. Please go to the next slide. Here you can see this the IMS hydrogen project, which is, let's say, the smaller project of building an electrolyzers, but we are still talking about 50 megawatt electrolyzers at our Emshaven site. And it's nearly a parallel time schedule we have in the Geth2 Nucleus project. It is, let's say, COD planned for 2024. The next, maybe on the right-hand side, you can see the South Wales Industrial Cluster, where we are following the, let's say, partnership approach. We are a partner in this South Wales Industrial Cluster as one of 6 industrial clusters. And the UK government has identified this as, let's say, with a high priority to become decarbonized. This shows that you need big initiatives to realize those, or maybe to start those projects. And this goes fully in line with the recently announced hydrogen strategy from UK. Ingo mentioned it. I think it's 2 or 3 weeks ago. They have done it. It's very interesting to read what they want to achieve. Okay, with a view to the time, please go to the next slide. Yeah, as I said, maybe because we as RWE Technology are involved of most of the RWE projects, we have a very good overview about the maturity of the project, and this is what I wanted to highlight here, where the projects are. this goes in line to this 1.8 gigawatt curve I have shown to you. None of the projects is in the construction phase. This is a light blue one, but we are close to enter this phase, so the execution phase. The other projects are more on the left-hand side, starting with conceptual thinking, conceptual studies, feasibility studies, or maybe the procurement process, where we, let's say, have procurement processes ongoing regarding all the components you need for the whole project. We are in different tender processes and negotiation processes with a huge amount of manufacturers to structure these projects and to bring all the bits and pieces together. And this is a very, very interesting learning curve and management challenge we have. And we are on a very good way. We have started in beginning of 2019, went now 2 years through this, let's say, development phase, and now we are close to the execution phase. And I think this gives you a feeling about the maturity of the projects we have. Maybe in 1 year, this slide will be different, because then we definitely have the construction field in dark blue, and this is just maybe as an outlook. The next slide, please. Yeah, this is, let's say, our Lighthouse project. I announced it already, the Geth2 Nucleus project, which is an initiative of a lot of partners. The aim is, you can see it on the picture there, is that we go to this RWE power station Lingen, which is an operating power plant. And on that side, we want to build this electrolyzers. This electrolyzers, because we are close to the coastline, will be connected to a wind park, and the hydrogen which is produced in Lingen has, let's say, 2 directions to go. It will be fed into a pipeline, and on the one hand, the pipeline goes to the refinery of BP in Lingen, and on the other hand, it goes, let's say, to the left side, and it goes via a more than 100-kilometer gas pipeline, which is a gas pipeline, and this will be converted to a hydrogen pipeline to the Ruhr area, and will supply the chemical park in Marl of Evonik, and also, let's say, another refinery of BP. And this shows you, let's say, the type of applications we have. On the one hand, producing hydrogen nearby the coast side, supplying some customers there, and putting the hydrogen into a pipeline and let's say transporting it up to let's say more than 130 kilometers to other customers. This is a very huge challenge, and this is only possible when you have all the partners on board, so that you can solve all the problems in a, let's say, holistic way. Because it doesn't help you when you solve the problems between the wind park and the electrolyzers to produce the hydrogen. You have to look very carefully, how can I, let's say, transport the hydrogen to the customers? Or maybe the worst thing would be that you don't have a customer, that you only have hydrogen available. Okay, next slide, please. This is the power plant Lingen, and this gives you an overview what we have to do. I, let's say, put in a schematic rectangle the electrolyzers in there. So in this operating power plant side, we have to integrate the electrolyzers, and this means sharing infrastructure, sharing cooling water, fresh water, wastewater, sharing, let's say, electrical infrastructure, and so on, without any interruptions of the operation of the power plant. And this is what I said at the beginning. It's a big difference whether you start from a greenfield or whether you have a greenfield project or if you have a brownfield project. And we are quite familiar. This is not the only brownfield project we have. We are quite familiar with this brownfield approach, because we have, on the one hand, a very huge experience in the, let's say, operation of conventional power plants, and therefore this enables us to understand all the processes and to see how can we integrate now, let's say, an electrolyzers there, which also has a, let's say, a construction period of, let's say, 2 years. How can we how can we make sure that there are no conflicts or maybe shutdowns of the power plant. Okay, with the next slide, I'd like to summarize a little bit what it takes. So what it takes to develop a green hydrogen project. So how do you have to think? Please, the next slide. What I have experienced now in the development phase of all the projects, that there's a high interest of hydrogen, a high interest of green hydrogen, and a high interest of, let's say, the substitution of gray hydrogen via or through green hydrogen. And what I have learned is that the customers sometimes not think to the end what they want to achieve with the hydrogen. And my strong recommendation is, please think what you want, what's your business case, or what do you want to achieve. Only the production of green hydrogen doesn't make sense. Maybe you have other economic alternatives for this. You have to think what I want to achieve. So you have to take into account, on the one hand, what is my power source? Do I have the power source? Do I have the fresh water source available? Because sometimes you have, let's say, if you go close to the renewable electricity production, you have no water, and you need a lot of water for your electrolyzers. For example, you need 10, roughly over the thumb, you need 10 kilograms of hydrogen, or 10 liters of water, to produce 1 kilogram of hydrogen. And this shows you the amount you need. If you want to have, let's say, 1,000 tons per 1 ton per hour, 2 tons per hour, or whatever you want to have, you have to make sure that you have the amount of fresh water available. And then you have to see, okay, what is the application of my H2? So think holistically. The next, then you have always have in mind that it will be an economic challenging journey. All of us went through economic challenging journeys. If you want to build a power plant, or if you want to build something, it's always economic challenging. But this is, let's say, a little bit more challenging, because there is this big economic gap between the green and the gray hydrogen. This has to be closed. And therefore, you have to check whether you have funding schemes available, or maybe whether you have to start discussions with the shareholders, or maybe the government, maybe to implement funding schemes, or maybe how to get subsidies, or maybe how to how to make green hydrogen more competitive. And this is one of the big problems you have, because you start now with a project or opportunity development, even though maybe the, let's say, the economic and regulatory framework is not in place yet. And therefore you have to develop, and you always have to steer your project development activities. And let's say it's not like going from A to B, it's going from A via, let's say, all the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on, and then you end up maybe with X. And it's at the beginning you might not see where you will come out. A further strong recommendation is, don't try to do it on your own. Try to build alliances and partnerships. Try to integrate, let's say, people from or partners from the whole value chain. Let's say from the production, transportation, or distribution, and let's say the customer in your project, just to make to develop a blueprint for the next project, so that, let's say, you incentivate the relevant people to think about regulatory adjustments, or maybe funding schemes. Inspire politicians but I think this will work, because as we know, that you are now, let's say, close to announcing some kind of a hydrogen mission in India. I went through it, and it's very nice. I like it very much, and I think there are, let's say, the right things you would like to you would like to proceed earning, let's say, or maybe getting the low-hanging fruits. This is very essential, just to set the starting point and develop, let's say, all the let's say, infrastructure prerequisites. But nevertheless, try to tell a compelling story for your project. And then, let's say, I mentioned it here, strive the Pareto principle. Don't try to solve all the problems right now. try to identify the biggest problems you have and try to announce them and try to solve them, just with the Pareto principle 80-20. This helps you very much, because you will never get through all, let's say, the solution of all the problems you have at the beginning. And no fear to pivot. So if you, let's say, talk to your partners or customers or with your colleagues, don't be too shy to think different. Think, let's say, from a different perspective, just to try to, let's say, to structure the project, or maybe always try to ask yourself, what do I want to achieve? What is my compelling story? Or what does the customer, if there's a customer, what does the customer want? So these are, let's say, some insights, let's say, how you should try to start the project or opportunity development for a green hydrogen project. It's a very challenging way, because the economic gap and regulatory gap is still there, and these gaps and a lot of other gaps have to be closed. Okay, next slide, please. We are now entering the chapter for some technical basics. I just want to check whether there are, let's say, some urgent questions. Oh no, doesn't work. Okay, I will continue with the technical basics. Ingo has mentioned let's say the pink, or maybe the next slide, please. Ingo has mentioned the turquoise hydrogen. I think it was the turquoise one, but here, let's say, just to have let's say, a joint basis of what we are talking. There are different colors available for hydrogen, even though hydrogen has no color, but let's say with the colors, it's just let's say the hint. What is, let's say, the electricity source, or maybe the production process of the hydrogen we have? On the left-hand side, we have the gray hydrogen, which is the let's say the best available technology right now to produce hydrogen. It's steam methane reforming, and the big disadvantage is that you produce, on the one hand, CO2, which you don't want to have, you want to avoid it, and then you, let's say, get the hydrogen. But this hydrogen is called gray hydrogen. Then you have the blue hydrogen. This is the same process, but you store the CO2 in the you make a carbon capture and storage. This is, I think, a very interesting way to let's say, enable or maybe to set the starting point for the, let's say, for the solution of all the challenges you have in your hydrogen journey, because you need, it's always hen and egg. You need, let's say, customers and the need of hydrogen, but you also need the, let's say, the logistics or maybe infrastructure, and you also need the production facilities. And this is a huge amount of investment which are needed. And I think with this blue hydrogen, this can, because it's available at short notice, you can start setting up the infrastructure prerequisites. Then we have the turquoise hydrogen. It is via this methane pyrolysis, and the nice outcome is that you don't have the CO2 as a gas available. It's concrete. You can try the carbon wherever you want, or maybe can use it in further products, but you have to be careful what happens with the project, because if you, let's say, build tires for cars in this, and then after, let's say, 15 years you burn the tires, then you have the same CO2 exposure in the atmosphere. I'm not a fan of this one, but that's a personal view. Then you have the pink hydrogen, where the only difference between the green hydrogen is that the electricity source comes from nuclear power. This is not possible in every country. In Germany, it's no-go, because we are phasing out of nuclear. But for example, in France and in other countries which are still committed to the nuclear power generation, it could be an option. And in Germany, we are facing strong. This is which is let's say, highlighted in this box, the green hydrogen, using the electrolyzers, and the power comes from the renewable electricity. So these are the colors which are, let's say, law in general when we talk about. Okay, next one. Next slide, please. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, thank you. Okay, due to the let's say to the only 50 minutes we have, I would like to skip that one. Please go to the next one. The next slide, please. Can we go to the next slide?
Yeah, just give us a minute. Just.
Okay. Okay, in the meantime, I can try to go through some questions. There was the topic of the water scarcity in India. You have yes, definitely water is, let's say, very important for your process. As I mentioned, you need 10 liters of water to get 1 kilogram of hydrogen, and therefore, let's say, next to the green electricity you need, the water supply is essential for this. You can use so it's a huge challenge, and if you don't have water available, it will be hard for your project to become economic, because let's say bringing the water with trucks to the electrolyzers, I think this is not an appropriate thing. Then there was a questions regarding the developments with respect to hydrogen transportation and distances. There are a few things. Now I see the next slide. Yeah, there are a few things on the way. Nevertheless, as a rule, the best thing is that you use the hydrogen where you produce the hydrogen. So if you have a steel process, produce the hydrogen on site and put the hydrogen directly into your process. If you are a chemical park, please produce there and put it directly. The transportation of hydrogen is technically possible, but challenging, and therefore it's economically also challenging. The best thing is using the hydrogen where it is produced. If it is not an option, you have to use it directly there. Then you have to think about pipelines, a new pipeline, or maybe converting a pipeline. You have to think about, let's say, a truck application, so that you put the hydrogen on a trailer, but you have to and drive it, let's say, over a few kilometers or whatever to the customer. But still have in mind that maybe right now approximately the capacity of let's say of such a truck is, let's say, you can transport 1 ton of hydrogen per truck. Then it might be then you can calculate on your own whether it makes sense or not. And the next thing is that there is let's say the option of the liquefied organic hydrogen carrier technology. This is let's say a technology which is very young, where you put the hydrogen into an thermal oil and put it and then transport the oil, including the hydrogen, from A to B or whatever. But to be honest, also could be challenging from the economic perspective. Okay, we are back in the presentation. Can you go to the next slide, please?
Can we change the slides now? Yes. Shall I move on to the next slide?
Yes, please go to the
Just
next
a moment.
slide. Thank you very
Sorry,
much.
there was a technical error. There was a technical error. We on slide 38. Is this okay, or shall we go to the next slide?
No, this slide is okay. This slide.
Okay.
Just as a highlight.
Sure.
This is, let's say, a simplified electrolyzers plant. You can see here. You need the green electricity production. You need the cooling system. You need the demineralization plant, and then let's say we are entering the core of the electrolyzers, which is, let's say, from a principle very easy. You have an anode and you have a cathode. You need, and after you have produced the hydrogen, you go through a separator into the oxo, and you have to dry the hydrogen going into a compressor, because depends on the application you have. If you want to put it into a pipeline, you need, for example, 80-90 bars. You have to compress the hydrogen, and then you are done. But you should never forget that you still have, let's say, 2 additional projects in your process. You also have the oxygen, and please think about the oxygen. How is there an application for the oxygen? Is there somebody who needs the oxygen? And depending on the specific technology, you also have heat available. And think about, can this heat be used in a, let's say, in a different process? Next slide, please. And this is maybe I'd like to skip because we have only 10 minutes left. I'd like to go to the next one. Okay, this gives you an overview of the available technologies. At the moment we have roughly 4 technologies available: the alkaline electrolyzers, the proton exchange membrane electrolyzers, the anion exchange membrane electrolyzers, and the solid oxide electrolyzers. The last 2 ones I'd like to skip because they are, let's say, good technologies, but they are from a technology readiness level not so quite advanced as the first 2 ones. And let's say, at least what I can say from an RWE, or maybe also from a German perspective, we are focusing for our projects, beside R&D projects, we are focusing right now on the first ones. Nevertheless, the latter 2 ones are also very good technologies and will play also a role, but there's, let's say, a small way to go to be competitive, or maybe to be applicable for the same applications we have for the first 2 ones. Just to highlight a few characteristics, the alkaline electrolyzers is you have potassium in water. You have an you have a pressure regime of approximately 30 bars. This is a little bit less than you have it with the proton exchange membrane. And these, the next 2 ones, the flexibility and efficiency, this is very important for your business case, because this shows how, let's say, how you can operate the electrolyzers. While the alkaline in its flexibility is, let's say, medium, the flexibility in comparison to the alkaline of the PEM is higher. So you can go from, let's say, 20% load up to 100% load faster and more often. And the efficiency of the electrolyzers is also, let's say, for the alkaline a little bit higher, because this technology is more than 100 years old. So there's, let's say, a huge amount of improvements already took place. The proton exchange membrane has some additional potential, because this technology, or maybe let's say the development of this technology has started only, let's say, 20-30 years before. So there's a bigger potential left. Yeah, the maturity is with the alkaline is higher, in the PEM is medium high. The market availability should be more than 100 megawatt for both. And if you look now to the right hand side, the anion exchange is less than 1 megawatt and doesn't fit to the things we have to what we want to achieve now, entering the gigawatt area. So you can't enter the gigawatt area when you're still in a size of less than 1 megawatt. Okay, I think I have to come to the to my last slide. So the key takeaways, so that we still have some time maybe for questions. I'm sorry for this. Can you go to the slide 46, please? Okay. Let's say, what are the key takeaways from a technical perspective of our projects? The technology decision is not, let's say, you can't do it, let's say, I go for this or I go for that. It's a highly iterative process. And I have learned in our project that we switched from technology A to B and back from B to A, and then there were some other prerequisites and some other conditions, and then it was again B, and then it was A. It is be flexible in your mind. You can't say from scratch or at the beginning, I would like to go for alkaline because it's a little bit cheaper, or I would like to go for PEM because it's, let's say, it has a higher flexibility. Yes, that's right, and that's also wrong, because you have to see how it fits into your project. It's a tailor-made solution you have to identify. Integration of brownfield electrolyzers is very challenging. This is what we discover. Nevertheless, it's possible, but it is, let's say, something on top to your normal project development activities. You have to think to look into the electrolyzers plant in its entirely value chain, not only technology driven. You have to commercially, regulatory, etc., etc. What we see is, as I said, that the alkaline and the PEM electrolyzers are the most advanced ones and ready for large scale capacities, so they are commercially available. Yeah, pressurized electrolyzers is also has some advantages, because you can also go for atmospheric electrolyzers, but most of the applications need some pressure, and therefore it's good to come with the hydrogen X electrolyzers with a special amount of compression, because compression is also very challenging and very expensive for your project. Okay, at this stage, I'd like to close my presentation so that we still have some time maybe to answer only a few questions. I'm sorry that I jumped over the time which was given to me. Sorry, but I hope you have something to take away with you.
Yeah, maybe I step in while I had the time to read some of the questions while Henning had not, he was talking. So looking to the few minutes we have left, if you agree, I would just go or start with item by item and see if I can have some quick answers. So there was one question: is there more risk in handling hydrogen as a fuel than other fuels which are used today? A clear answer is it depends. Yeah? It has different risks than let's say natural gas or fuel oil or coal. But it's manageable. It's manageable, yeah. And there are also studies going on to transport hydrogen via ammonia. Then you have definitely higher risk with the material, but all this is manageable. The second question was, can get green hydrogen explained more clearly? I think we have seen that green hydrogen is produced purely from green energy, so no CO2 is emitted. Then I've been asked if we have any small-scale H2 energy devices, so for houses or micro-scale. That's honestly not our business. We look to the large parts, to the infrastructure parts, and if you remember these kind of fuel cells technology, which could be a consumer for hydrogen at the end, that's not the part of the business we are in. So, but that can be a kind of coincidence when the hydrogen industry and the networks are developing. Another colleague asked if existing natural gas pipes can be used for blending hydrogen. There's a clear yes, but you certainly have to look at the age and the number of the coding of the valves and the sealings, but basically it can. Let me see if it's the next question was.
Mr. Ingo, do you want us to call out the questions?
Yeah, I find one quite interesting. It was a question from a colleague: is it not important to focus on sufficiency through renewables for power generation first? That is really connected to the hydrogen industry. So yes, you need to focus on the generation of green hydrogen via wind and solar first, because otherwise you don't have enough green electricity for green hydrogen. But as mentioned at the beginning, not all the sectors can be decarbonized with electricity. So if you want to have a decarbonization in every sector, this link to the hydrogen value chain is necessary, even though we learned from Henning that it needs still some kind of commercial incentives to really grow the business.
There were some questions regarding the water quality you need, whether we can use wastewater for this. Theoretically, yes, but you have to, let's say, you have to handle the water, and you have to deionize the water. The best thing is that you have, let's say, some kind of tap water. There are high standards of the purity of the water, but this can be done via filter, so it's not a rocket science, and the technical solutions are not so expensive. So it depends case by case, but nevertheless, yeah, it's tap water or wastewater, but you have to handle it. Yeah. The next one is capex for 1 megawatt of green hydrogen is around 1.2 million euro. Does this include liquefaction and compression costs? Depending on the pressure level you would like to achieve, yes, it could cover it. The liquefaction, it's not included. So yeah.
Then I've seen another one. What should be the minimum power requirement in the plant that they should start thinking of converting to green hydrogen from LNG? There's really, well, there is no one-fits-all answer. What I can just share is we have customers with small industrial processes in the pharmaceutical industry, so hydrolyzer or hydrogeneration processes, where they also consider to use hydrogen to become carbon neutral on the site. It's a small scale. They don't have LNG, they have up to now some other fossil fuels. So there's no one-fits-all answer to this size. It depends again on the customer, being close to the customer, and the energy you have available. And there was another one from potential for generating hydrogen from biomass. Henning touched it shortly. I would just add that we are also having a development project in RWE where we use waste, so which is in fact also kind of CO2 neutral fuel source with the gasification process to produce hydrogen on that way.
There was one question, what power requirements to produce 1 kilogram of H2 by electric? So you can see maybe, let's say in average, it's 50 or 55 kilowatt hours you need to produce 1 kilogram of hydrogen, just over a thumb, depending, let's say, what is the, let's say, the scope you include in this, including compression, liquefaction, or water deionization. But this is, let's say, a rough number, 50 to 55 kilowatt hours for 1 kilogram hydrogen.
Yeah, I think we had really a lot of other questions I see on the list. It's a long list, but I see that the time is running out. So I believe many of these questions we could also answer by mail at the end. Yeah, I'm not sure how the timing looks like now, but I think we have to close. But please help me there.
So all the questions that have come in today during the session, which we have a lot of questions actually, we will share all your questions along with your email ID with the speakers, and they will get back to you over email. And we will also share the presentation with you that was shared right now during the session, which will also have their contact details. So you can also feel free to write to them directly in case you have any queries or further questions. Can we proceed with the vote of thanks now?
Yeah, thank you, Sana. Hello, everyone. On behalf of the Indo-German Chamber of Commerce, we would like to thank our knowledge partner, the RWE Technology International, for putting forth a session on what it takes to develop green hydrogen projects. I would like to thank our panelists, Mr. Ingo Felkraut and Mr. Henning Boswick, for delivering such an explicit and informative session on the subject matter. I'm sure our members and guests would have definitely benefited from the plethora of information given by you. So once again, thank you very much for coming on board. I would like to convey a big thank you to our wonderful guests for having taken out their valuable time and being part of today's session. Thank you very much for your support and encouragement for making all our webinars a great success. Dear audience, please do write to us sharing your valuable feedback. A recorded link along with the presentation of today's webinar will be shared with you all in 2 to 3 working days. Moving further, I would also like to thank my team from Events Department, Sana, Geth2, Nikhil and Samiha for having successfully putting this webinar together. Lastly, I would request our audience to please fill in the survey form which will come up at the end of this session. This feedback of yours is of utmost importance to us. Also, to know more about upcoming webinars, please do visit our website, and we hope to have your presence and participation for our future events with the same enthusiasm as always. So thank you until next time. Stay safe, stay healthy and stay well. Bye-bye. Thank you and have a pleasant evening.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.